So, we start the movie with a fight sequence. Sorta. Our heroes are attempting to free some caught dragons and bring them back to Burke. Despite being a combat scenario, multiple characters don't seem to take the situation all that seriously. Specifically these four. Snotlout manages to set his butt on fire due to not armoring it, which also suggests that the genius that brought a bright, flaming dragon on a stealth mission and later gets caught on his own cape is not only responsible, but capable of making fireproof armor. Fishlegs starts his weird quirk of babying an infant dragon by bringing it into a combat zone. The twins actively make as much noise as possible. Again, this is a stealth mission. They also seem to struggle with the concept of doors. None of these four are shown to be competent in combat within this scene. Their extended stupidity calls into question the competency of the other characters for involving them. Past that, the goons just suck. Though as the plot makes special note of later, they were up against a lot of dragons, so the fact that they lose is understandable. Our heroes lead the freed dragons back to Burke. We get dialogue establishing the state of the world to varying degrees of subtlety.
And please, call me Valka. It has been a year.
The idea they want to get across is that Burke is overrun with dragons to such a degree that basic functionality is being lost and catastrophic failure is around the corner. They demonstrate the latter by having one of the new dragons accidentally cause a chain reaction of destroyed buildings. Something that no one is happy about, but is also hand-waved away as if multiple physical structures collapsing was a minor annoyance with no potential harm caused by it at all that they may want to go and check up on. They use Toothless's dragon mind control to rein in the new dragon. Hiccup's mindset is entirely focused on the retrieval of more dragons and Toothless above all other factors, while Astrid proves to be the most reasonable person in the group, calling the previous scene sloppy. This is also the point where Snotlout begins simping for Valka. We move indoors, still as tight and packed in as outdoors, with Gobber trying to explain why the crowded thing is an issue. Along the chain of dialogue, he brings up the idea of marriage, saying that Astrid is
You're the only one with any sense around here.
Which is somewhat demeaning to Hiccup given his accomplishments, but given their argument and the intent he had for said comments, it's not an unreasonable line. This is also the point where Tough Nut becomes condescending to Hiccup about marriage for whatever reason. Following this up, we get our introduction to Grimmel, the villain of the movie. He's being summoned by these three warlords, these mysterious nameless entities leading the effort to capture dragons whose implied resources make the fact that they're losing against our heroes very suspect. The character of these warlords skirt on the childish side. They don't quite behave how you'd expect conquerors to behave, but generally show enough character to get by. Back to Grimmel. He strikes fear in the heart of the random goons, demonstrates no interest in the warlord's cause, and only gets on board after learning they have a Night Fury. He seems to already know of Hiccup, describing him as Stoic's boy, but Toothless has escaped his notice up to this point. To get him on board with capturing Toothless, they present him with the Light Fury, a dragon that has the ability of cloaking itself that they somehow manage to capture. Once he's on board, we get a flashback of Stoic explaining to Child Hiccup what the hidden world is before flashing back to the present time. Now, the hidden world sure is different from the dragon's nest he was after in the first movie, but don't let this retcon pull you out of the moment. Hiccup is hanging out at some random ledge overseeing Burke when Astrid shows up. They have some heavy plot dialogue introducing the hidden world as a potential hideaway for Burke to escape the warlords, and then morphs into a relationship scene before Toothless hears something. Toothless investigates and finds the Light Fury. This is also the beginning of Grimmel's scheme. So, the Light Fury was put here by Grimmel. By the end of the scene, she tries to kill Hiccup twice. This is also the first dragon that Toothless the Alpha couldn't mind control for no stated reason. And he couldn't chase after her because he didn't have a rider. The Light Fury is very much a wild dragon, easily spooked and violent to any and all humans. In fact, that's quintessential to her arc in the story. She is also not restrained in any capacity. Did Grimmel expect to be able to recover her after the initial meeting? If he does, how? Because she flies away and has cloaking. If he doesn't, why were there no traps present at the first meeting? What is the strategic value to introducing a female love interest for Toothless if you don't have any control over her? I ask these questions, but the thing is they will actually be answered later. The entire meeting was also super convenient. The Light Fury was knocked out via tranquilizer and happened to wake up right when Toothless found her. Toothless also only found her because he was close enough to hear a sound she made while sorta knocked out, and was only close enough because Hiccup happened to be chilling on a particular ledge outside of the village. If any other dragons or humans found her first, or the timing was off and she just woke up and left, then the bait achieves nothing. Hiccup also doesn't seem to register that the wild dragon might blast the random human she sees after trying to blast him once. The Light Fury leaves, and from this point on, Toothless is simping for this Light Fury something fierce. A bit of dialogue later, one line that's way more mean-spirited than I think it was meant to be.
Trust me, relationships are nothing but pain and misery.
And they head back to the spot they originally found the Light Fury, in some effort to find the dragon again. Tough Nut's condescension gets much worse, giving him the nickname Hickey and calling him a malnourished grunt before they find the spot, a tranquilizer dart, and a big metal net trap. Now, starting with the tranquilizer, the implication was that the dart was used on the Light Fury. Question though, when did he use the dart? Because if it was before the interaction, then Hiccup didn't notice the suspicious dart the first time around. And there's the implication of having successfully moved the dragon into position, but still needing to knock it out once there, unless the dart just stuck on her body the entire process. If it's for after the interaction, why did the Light Fury return to the exact same spot after flying away? Either case, if the trap he set up was successful, how exactly does Grimmel recover Toothless, being that they are in Burke territory? The trap appears to be a net not for killing. Of course, because Grimmel is super smart and can predict the actions of all characters perfectly, the first trap and tranquilizer dart are just there in part of a genius tactic of announce your presence to the enemy. Something he follows up on in the very next scene. The meeting between Grimmel and Hiccup, he just shows up in his house. Door closed, no entrances, manages to just show up out of nowhere, stun Toothless, and starts taunting Hiccup. Their back and forth is solid until Grimmel realizes that Toothless is actually Fish Legs in disguise as multiple people barge in. You see, this was actually a trap for Grimmel because Hiccup knew he'd sneak into his house in the middle of the night to taunt him about how he's totally going to kill his dragon, but not also notice the goons on standby. Also, the information Hiccup's operating under is that Grimmel is a dragon hunter, so naturally he uses his friend as a stand-in for Toothless, which didn't end horrifically because he happened to be using non-lethal darts. Upon getting the upper hand, Grimmel calls his dragons to flee and somehow manages to overpower them in their entirety, despite having way more dragons at their disposal to fight him with. They call an emergency meeting revealing that the main cast somehow has total political control of Burke, and Hiccup, in response to recent events, wants to flee Burke in pursuit of hiding in the hidden world. Astrid steps in to support Hiccup, who somehow gets a better response from the crowd. The actual plan he has is total desperation. Hope he can find the hidden world and hide from their enemies. The fact that the trappers are still capturing wild dragons, evidenced by the fact that they keep hitting their transports, would mean that if their initial plan was successful exactly as it was originally intended, then they are writing off any and all dragons they don't already have custody of instead of fighting off the enemy. After everyone accepts the plan of run and hide, you have the scene of them flying away without a clear understanding of where they're headed. It cuts to Grimmel revealing that yes, them running away was all part of his plan to deprive them of their defensible position, yet doesn't actually have a mechanism to follow them, only narrow down the possibilities through logical extrapolation. Considering their actual plan was to just fly in one direction in pursuit of the hidden world, which Grimmel might not actually know about, it's impressive this logical extrapolation has any merit. If the cast had never found land, it's likely they would have just kept flying until their dragons tired and eventually all drowned in the ocean, which doesn't seem like the best plan. Grimmel also explains his strategy involving the Light Fury. You see, he knew Toothless didn't have a girlfriend, so introducing him to the Light Fury will cause him to become thirsty, at which point he will be distracted and therefore easier to catch. Apparently, this effect applies to the Light Fury as well, which is convenient as the Light Fury needs to be around for Toothless to remain a simp, and he doesn't have a means to control her at this point, along with the very real possibility of the Light Fury losing track of where Toothless is after he flew miles away in the middle of the night. The Light Fury also seems much more capable of tracking Toothless than Grimmel is, which is very convenient for the plot. Anyways, the Light Fury shows up, Toothless leaves the pack to follow, and she proceeds to throw Hiccup off him. Toothless goes and picks him up immediately, given the whole he can't fly without a rider thing, and everyone is laughing about it, no one having even slight concern for Hiccup's well-being in this scene. Eventually they land in New Burke. Everyone starts immediately building a new village even though they clearly know the plan, and Hiccup is bullied into allowing them to do it. Snotlout has shifted his weird simping for Valka into jealousy of Eret, somehow. Also this line.
Died and made you chief. What? Ow!
So things progress as they do, and eventually night comes, and we get the Light Fury courting scene. This scene is done without any dialogue and depends entirely on if you find the Light Fury romance compelling. What it eventually comes down to is the Light Fury flies away and Toothless can't follow him due to requiring a rider. In response, Hiccup casually makes a new tail for him that doesn't have this requirement. The ability to make this kind of a tail was established in a Christmas special of all things, and a line here references that. Still, not building in solo flight to the tail anyways is weird. He apparently dries the fireproof paint as he applies it instead of painting the whole thing for some reason. Toothless leaves and we move to Valka, who's checking to see if they were followed and finding hundreds of ships, and Grimmel, who deliberately lets her escape as part of his plan. Going immediately back to Toothless, he sort of just flies in a random direction and happens across the Light Fury. They also establish a new lightning-based cloaking for Toothless that somehow doesn't damage his prosthetic tail. The dragon dancing happens to end them at the entrance to the hidden world. This could either be total coincidence or the Light Fury leading him there. Going back to New Burke, construction of the new village is going well and everyone is already happy with the location. We get some dialogue before Valka returns, and Hiccup's immediate idea is to capture Grimmel, which is sorta out of left field for his character, but alright. They attempt to capture Grimmel, but little do they know this was all according to his plan, for Grimmel knew they tried to kidnap him and prepares a trap for them. At which point he elaborates the dragons he uses are drugged into service using their own venom. First, the dragons happen to be susceptible to their own venom, which is unfortunate. Second, an implication is that he uses this venom for both the tranquilizer darts and the mind control, which is a very large range of applications for a single toxin. Third, he has access to dragon mind control toxin, which he could have used on the Light Fury instead of just letting her be wild. There's a little skirmish and our heroes escape the cage trap somehow. Sort of sucks as a cage if they can get out. They then find themselves outside with the villain's dragons inside the caged structure that was just collapsed by one of their dragons, and their idea is to flee. Grimmel is standing outside, watching them fly away with all their dragons that they brought in the dead of night, with no other troops or dragons around. Imagine if they, stayed to salvage the operation after gaining access to their dragons. They could have easily captured him at that point, but they fled instead. Only once they made it all the way back to New Burke did they realize they left Roughnut behind, everything related to which is a testament to the shared stupidity of the twins.
How could you not notice she was missing? You ride a two-headed dragon.
Astrid takes Hiccup to try and find Toothless, and we get a horrifying Tough Nut scene. So, Hiccup and Astrid are trying to find Toothless via dragon. There is a throwaway line of "she's tracking something," which indicates that she can track dragons. How she's supposed to track over miles of ocean is beyond me, but she does. What exactly she's tracking is left ambiguous, however, so it could be that Stormfly is tracking Toothless, or she's homing in on the hidden world for no apparent reason, while also being the place Toothless happens to be at. Stormfly appears to be disobeying Astrid when she enters the hidden world, so there might be behavior-altering qualities of the location for the dragons, though she never misbehaves again. The hidden world itself has a lot of unique imagery and mechanics related to dragons. All of these are irrelevant to the main plot, as this is the only time we ever go to the hidden world. The existence of this location is rather suspect given the plots of the previous two movies, however. Once the humans are spotted, the dragons all immediately try to murder them, despite being the alpha dragon. Apparently the only one in existence now, as the main dragon area of the hidden world doesn't have another. Toothless's dragon mind control powers have limited usability as he struggles to prevent the other dragons from murdering the humans. We have another flashback, everyone is sad, we get back to New Berk, the Light Fury followed, at which point Toughnut shows up, revealing she led Grimmel to their location and he makes his move immediately. Grimmel is a very good shot, hitting the Light Fury and Toothless first try, chains them up before anyone else in the area could run up to him. Once Toothless is captured, all other dragons on the island show up regardless of how far away they were, including Stormfly, who somehow got really far away before the ambush so she couldn't intervene. And they do nothing because Toothless ordered them to. Out of fear, Grimmel will kill the Light Fury. Grimmel takes his captured dragon down to the giant fleet of ships that managed to somehow keep up with Toughnut with no one noticing until just now. Now, when Grimmel does this, the entire flock of dragons from the island followed him. This is supposed to be a function of Toothless being the alpha dragon. A couple of problems, first being that Toothless already left the island earlier and this effect didn't kick in. The dragon stayed perfectly fine without the alpha. Now, the purpose of capturing Toothless with regards to the warlords is to capture all the other dragons for their dragon army, but Grimmel isn't shown giving any orders to Toothless to make them follow him. If anything, he orders his dragons to hold off the pack. In a later scene, the warlords will be caging all the dragons upon one dragon sorta not going along with it. He orders him to comply after being threatened by Grimmel. From this, it's possible to infer that Grimmel ordered Toothless to bring the dragons with him, and it just wasn't on screen. If this is the case, then you have Toothless allowing all his fellow dragons to be put into slavery on the off chance that the described Night Fury killer won't kill the Light Fury who he has in chains. Despite this event with all dragons on the island responding, only named characters show up to the ledge to see what's happening. So, this is the point where Grimmel apparently stops predicting exactly what everyone can do, for he didn't predict how Hiccup would fight back after this. Hiccup has gliders for the main crew fitted and prepared in advance that even they didn't seem aware of. From that, they also don't seem to have any training in gliding prior to this, with one throwaway line of
"Coulda used some practice!"
but perform well enough to all land on the enemy ship without any issue or injury minus Snotlout. Upon doing this and removing the immediate threat against the Light Fury, multiple dragons casually break out of their cages after getting the order from Toothless. Either they have terrible cages or they just forgot to lock those multiple cages after putting dragons in them. This issue is apparently fleet-wide. Due to entering the combat field via glider, the cast has a questionable ability to bring weapons. Hiccup has his fire sword, but all other weapons the group uses probably come from Astrid, immediately picking them up from the enemy ship that conveniently had them lying around. I say presumably because as the scene is depicted, they cut away and back with a character having gotten a weapon twice. Astrid is only ever shown picking them up. It is also worth noting that not all characters pick up a weapon to use despite many being available. Characters demonstrate a nasty habit of lowering their helmets mid-battle to show their faces, and the warlords are sorta just standing around watching all this happen until the three adults show up to fight them. Grimmel's mind control poison is apparently really easy to apply and works immediately as he uses it to take control of the Light Fury. Hiccup frees Toothless and follows him. The rest of the fighting on the ship is sort of pointless. They only fight on the one ship, but pull the camera away, the entire fleet has been set ablaze because the dragons have systemically destroyed them. Everyone returns to New Berk shortly after this, not enough time to levy a concerted effort of opening cages for weak dragons, or what have you, over the hundreds of ships, so presumably the dragons just dealt with it. Our hero's effort didn't really matter past the freeing of Toothless. The Hiccup and Toothless versus Grimmel fight brings them up against Grimmel's dragons. They pull a couple maneuvers until the dragons all grab them. For whatever reason, they can't seem to sting Toothless, but they can grab him just fine. To get out of this, Toothless uses his lightning maneuver he used earlier, which conveniently doesn't kill Hiccup, so that's nice. In the midst of the action, Hiccup finds himself holding onto the Light Fury with a stunned Toothless. To counter this, he casually pulls off the collar that is injecting mind control poison into the Light Fury, without damaging the dragon in any way, and without any sign of physical trauma from the injection on her afterwards. Stuff happens, people gather, everyone accepts that dragons can't be with humans at the convenient point where the only faction they know of who wants to capture dragons has just been defeated, and the dragons all leave for the hidden world, calling into question Grimmel's tranquilizer dart, cause Toothless was knocked out by one a minute ago, but apparently has the energy to fly to the hidden world without issue. At this point, dragons are now gone. In later dialogue, dragons are referred to as a myth, things forgotten by man. Apparently, all those wild dragons that the trappers were trapping, or, you know, the dragons the warlords had in the beginning, they disappeared too when Toothless took all of New Berk's dragons into the hidden world. 2 time skips later, we have Hiccup and Astrid sailing to the hidden world with their children. The capacity for them to find the hidden world a second time is unlikely given they were using a dragon over miles of open ocean. Operating with the expectation that they maintained perfect navigation skills and memorized its location, the trip is weirdly suspect given they don't have a way to go into the hidden world without a dragon. It is extremely convenient that Toothless happened to be lying around at the entrance in a spot for them to notice at the time they arrived to be able to interact with the dragons at all. The dragon children are an affront to God, their black and white aesthetic look awful, yet somehow maintain the invisibility powers of their mother regardless of coat, which makes you question how it works at all. They also don't use any harnesses to ride the dragons, happens throughout the movie but seems a little unsafe to do with your children. I saw this movie twice back in theaters, the second time with my parents. My mother slept through the whole thing, and my father through the first scene. Having never seen a How to Train Your Dragon movie before, he assumed Hiccup's prosthetic leg was something that happened in the opening scene, and just missed it. Coming out of the movie, he expressed surprise, not expecting it to be a love story and specifically noting how impressed he was with certain aspects. The key one he pointed out was how you'd have dialogue where the subject they're talking about isn't immediately clear. The love stories reflect one another, and as such, dialogue regarding Toothless and the Light Fury can also be read as reflecting Hiccup and Astrid.
I'm saying, how do we know if she's right for us?
Us?
You know what I mean. She's so wild and skittish. I'm just gonna say it. I don't trust her.
Ha ha! Can't tame 'em all, Hiccup.
He was really impressed with that. He then went on to say that the movie was only alright. How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World isn't a bad movie. On a technical level, it's downright great. Both the animation and sound design are on point. All issues the movie has largely come down to an unfortunate reality of it achieving exactly what it set out to be: a kids' movie. For all the fighting that goes on, no one dies on screen. Complexity is effectively absent as the villains are impressively evil, and the good guys' answer to fight them are incredibly basic. On top of everything else, there is just patches of distilled cringe. Nitpicks aside, whether this movie succeeds depends almost entirely on if you find the 2 parallel love stories compelling. I do. Others might not. That's the rub.